Hello, I am Megan and welcome to BRWC, the website where you can get all of your TV and film news reviews and trailers. And today, 28 years later, is finally released. I've been waiting for this for about a decade and it's finally come out. I'm going to go see it at some point today, but this was something I was going to actually release yesterday, but unfortunately I wasn't feeling too well to film it, so I do apologise for that. But I thought we'll do a video on the previous two films. So this is going to be a review in one video. This is going to be on 28 days later and 28 weeks later. On just a heads up before we get into things, yes, there are going to be spoilers. The first film was released in 2002 and the second film a couple of years later. So yeah, I'm going to be spoiling everything in these two films, so just be warned. So let's start off with 28 Days Later, released in 2002. This was directed by DannyBoyle, written by AlexGarland, and it stars CillianMurphy as Jim, a patient who ends up in a coma due to a bike crash. He wakes up 28 days later to find an empty London and a deadly virus has taken over the UK. So this is one I've actually seen quite a few times. It's one of my favourite horror films. I still think it's fantastic. It has been a while since I've actually watched it, but yeah, I've watched this quite a few times. So it was very interesting to go back and watch it and view it critically instead of just for entertainment. And it's still fantastic. It's still an example of a modern classic. I think the cinematography is fantastic. It's deliberately outdated looking. They use a lot, much older technology compared to when the film was actually released, but it really works. It looks very grainy, very dour, which suits the apocalyptic look that the film is given. John Murphy composes, and his score is fantastic in this because it's very minimalistic. It's only there when it really needs to be there to emphasise the situation or emphasise what a location looks like because of what's happened. And because of that, it's very effective. It's very small in terms of how quiet it is. I think the loudest time that his score sort of properly lifts up in volume and in urgency is near the end of the film. But aside from that, it's very quiet, it's very subtle, it's only there when it really needs to be, but because of that, it's really effective. The cast is also great. So CillianMurphy plays Jim. We know by now he's a fantastic actor. Brendan Gleeson is also great as Frank, and he's a very sort of kind and caring figure. We'll talk about my problems with him in a minute. But he's a very kind and caring figure. Selena, played by Naomi Harris, is also fantastic. She was great. She's this very hard-hearted figure who has gotten used to just surviving and only surviving. There's a quote that she keeps bringing up throughout the film that says, you know, surviving is all we have now. And as the film goes on, she learns that actually there's a bit more to it. Like, there's more to just surviving, there's also living. And throughout the film, this is also demonstrated as well. Christopher Eccleston is also in this as a not very nice army general. I think what's interesting about this film is that it shows, yes, the apocalypse is obviously awful, but it shows it on all different spectrums. Like, yes, it's going to be horrible in general, but then you think about the logistics of things. You know, in the third act, they find what they think is a safe haven owned by Christopher Eccleston's character, who is an army general. He has his own little army, but then you find out actually there's little details to his plan of rebuilding humanity, and that's when it all goes downhill. But what you get to show is, you know, the feralness of humanity, as well as the lighter side of humanity earlier on in the film, where I was surprised to remember that there's actually some humorous moments in this, specifically the supermarket scene. I forgot that was actually in here, But I think what it shows is that, you know, there's different sides to humanity. There's the violent, feral, very primal side that the army men portray, and then there's the joyful wholesomeness and heartwarming side of humanity, like displayed in the supermarket scene. But then the film is really good at showing the tension of the situation they're in. The scene where they have to fix the taxi is still really tense and holds up really, really well. That is horrific. It's really scary. But the film does a great job at showing you that, this is a scary situation that they are in as well. So it ticks all the boxes, really, to fully demonstrate the full scale of this type of apocalypse and this type of world that this film is taking place in. I did have a couple of problems with this film. Frank's death is really stupid. He did not need to... He knew there was a dead body there. Why did he look up and let the blood get into his eye? He knows how... Surely they know how the disease is transmitted, because Selina would have told them. So that was really stupid. I forgot how this film actually ended. And there's a moment where they're escaping the army's compound and it ends on a freeze frame, which was of its time, but now looking at it, it's really outdated and a bit cheesy when you compare it to the rest of the film. So I didn't really like that very much. And then Megan Burns plays Hannah, who is Frank's young daughter. I did not like her in this film at all. Her acting was very wooden. Everyone else's acting was great. Like, literally everyone was fantastic in this. But I felt like her acting was very wooden. It was like she was reading the script for the first time. And I couldn't really get on with that, unfortunately. But overall, I do think this is still a modern classic. This is fantastic. I really enjoyed my time with this again. So that was 28 Days Later. Let's go on to 28 Weeks Later, released in 2007. 28 Weeks Later follows a father, played by Robert Carlyle, and his two kids as they move into a new secured compound in London after the infected have started to starve. However, this is a horror film and things quickly start to go very downhill. So this is one I actually have never seen all the way through. I've seen the opening scene before and I've seen near the ending. It wasn't as far as to the end as I thought it was, but I've never seen this all the way through. This doesn't involve AlexGarland as a writer or DannyBoyle as a director. They are executive producers on this film, but I think because they didn't come back for directing and writing credits, I do remember a lot of people not being okay with that. This has kind of got mixed reviews. Some people not being happy that they're not involved in this, while others have said, like, this is just an okay film. I personally really enjoyed this. It's a very different tone compared to the first film, but I actually really enjoyed this. Did have some issues with it though. So let's go through the positive first. John Murphy returns to compose this film, and just like with the first film, it's fantastic. It's a lot more prominent in this one because the film is doing something different. The sequel has a different tone to it. It's more action-packed compared to the previous film that was a horror film about survival, about humanity. This one is more to do with, okay, well, the infection has restarted and humans now have to survive and escape the compound that they moved into. It's a very different film. It's a lot more action-packed compared to the previous film. So the music plays a lot more of a prominent role in this. But I still think it's really, really good. And once again, these two films seem to have great opening sequences. This one is fantastic, and I think what this film also does, just as good as the first film, it's very warm in here, so I do apologise, is their opening sequences. They're really good at keeping you stressed, keeping up that tension and keeping up those stressful moments. I think this film does a really good job of it for the most part, and I'll get into that later on. But this opening sequence is fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I was definitely holding my hand very tightly watching this one. And then once we get into the film, I thought the acting was great. I think Robert Carlyle is fantastic. Again, we'll talk about that in a moment because I did have some problems with this film. But I thought he was great for the most part, and I thought the cast were fantastic. I didn't know that Jeremy Renner and Idris Elba were in this. I think this came out when they weren't as well known. Marvel obviously hadn't picked them up yet, and I don't think Hurt Locker for Jeremy Renner had come out yet. So, yeah, they were not as well known at that time, but I think they're still great. Idris Elba doesn't have a big role in this, but Jeremy Renner definitely does. And I really liked his character. He plays a rooftop sniper who acts as a guard for the safety compound, for the quarantine compound. And I really liked him. I really liked his story arc and where his journey went. We'll just get into my problem with Robert Carlyle's character, Don. I feel like we all know this sequence by now. There's a scene where essentially what happens is his two kids escape the compound to go back to their original home to find a picture of their mother, who Don thinks has died. And they find her, and it turns out that she is immune to the virus, but she is a carrier of the virus. And Robert Carlyle goes to see her and kisses her. Now, he doesn't know that she's a carrier, and I get that. Because as far as he's concerned, she's not infected. However, then you think about the actual situation. She does have markings on her eye, which are visible. Plus, I feel like we have basic knowledge of how diseases are transmitted, even in 2007. So, yeah, this was the thing that led to Don gets infected and the virus restarts up. And I thought that was a really stupid way of bringing it back again. Because on one side, I get it, he's relieved to see her because he thought she died in the opening scene. We all are led to believe she died in the opening scene, but she didn't. But again, wouldn't we have basic knowledge of how diseases are transmitted? I had a problem with that, and I think that is the general consensus of people who have seen this film. A lot of people seem to have an issue with that. But that's how things start back up again. The people in the safety compound are immediately alerted, and a whole group of people are locked into this room for their safety. And Don finds that room and starts infecting the people that are locked in that room. I thought this sequence was really good, but I think the better one was afterwards, when all of the people managed to get out and the rooftop snipers, including Jeremy Renner, can't differentiate between the infected and the regular people. Their movements are too shaky, there's too much running around, there's too many of them that they can't differentiate between the two cases. So the order is given to just shoot anyone you can. I thought this was a really interesting set of sequences, despite how stupidly it started. I did like those two sequences because I think this film shows, while the first film shows different perspectives of humanity when we are forced to survive, I think this one shows how quickly human society can panic when faced with a dangerous situation. And I think these two sequences were a really good example of that. Plus, it also shows that panic can spread quickly within humanity when we don't know what's going on, when there's too much going on. And yeah, I thought they were really, really good sequences. I do also think the idea of the wife being a carrier but also immune was an interesting idea. I wish they'd kind of lingered on that a little bit longer. Yeah, let's just get on to the problems I have with this film. The young kid, Andy, is really stupid. This film seems to have the kids are stupid trope, which I was a bit annoyed by quite quickly. And there is a point at the end where they're in a train station, and again, a lot of this sequence was really good. One of the characters uses the night vision on their rifle to see everything in the dark. That was really scary. But what was really stupid is that Andy does get infected, because he sees Don, who's infected, he sees his dad, and doesn't run. Now, narratively, I get it. You have to show that Andy has the same gene as his mother. and he's also immune to the virus as well. I get that. But again, it was really stupid. If he'd started running but Don had caught up with him anyway, I would have been happy with that. But that's not what he did. He just stood there, and that was it. And let himself get bitten. So I did get a bit annoyed by him. That wasn't the first, like, stupid decision he made throughout the film. The other problem I had with this film is this film adopts the shaky cam that the first film had. And while the first film, despite the shakiness, it wasn't always there, and when it was shaky you could follow along with what was going on. It wasn't too bad. This film is just all over the place with the shaky cinematography and with that shaky cam type of filming. It doesn't really work most of the time, unfortunately, and you can't really follow along with what's going on sometimes. Again, with the sequence that I've already mentioned where they're given the order to shoot anyone, that works because that works into the panic of that situation. But there are other moments where there's an example where the two kids, Tammy and Andy, get out of the compound and start driving around London. And there are a couple moments where it's shaky for no reason. So there's a few moments that I did find I couldn't really follow. And then the last criticism I actually have for both films, but I wanted to leave it till last because it encompasses everything. Both films have a problem with the sound mix. Now, I watched the first film on, I think it was shown on ITV a few days ago, and then the second film is on Netflix. I know very well that streaming services have always had a problem with sound mix, with volume mix, and that kind of thing. But I don't know what it was originally like with the first film. So the sound mix was all over the place with both of them, but I don't know if that's just what the film was like or whether the streaming services or the TV channel has actually changed that. I do have the DVD for the first film, but I can't find it. I don't know where it is. I seem to have misplaced it. So this was the way that I had to watch the first film. But yeah, the volume and the sound mix was just all over the place. Sometimes the music was really quiet. Loud noises would suddenly be very loud, and they weren't jump scares. So that did annoy me. I did find myself constantly having to turn the volume up and down. But overall, first film, still a modern classic. It's fantastic. It does have some problems, but I think it's still amazing. It's an amazing film. And the second film I actually also really enjoyed. I have more problems with it, but overall I didn't think it was a bad sequel at all. Despite the fact that the original director and writer are not involved, I still thought this was a worthy sequel. 28 years later is out today. So I'm going to see what that's like. So either you're going to get the review for 28 years later today, or you're going to get it tomorrow. It depends what time I'm able to get to the cinema. So yeah, you'll either get a double upload or it will be up the next day. But this was my reviews on 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. I was Megan. This is Battle Royale with Cheese. See you soon.